Yeah. Okay, welcome to the October 3rd, 2023 session of Tangerine SDR and Hamsci technical session. My name is Dave, KV0S, and this week I've been starting to work on setting up a second K9Q radio so that I could try some VHF stuff. So I still have my HF K9Q running, and I just really didn't want to fuss with it while it's working. So I thought I'd set up a second instance to see for the VHF. Anyway, that's about it for me. Next on the list is Nathaniel, W2NAF. Go ahead, Nathaniel.
Thanks, Dave. We've had a lot going on this week. I'm very happy with so much of it. We got the ARDC Hamsci workshop grant proposal submitted. So now we're going to move on to working towards the NSF grant proposal for the Hamsci workshop with Case Western. The Frontiers paper is moving along. I made over 200 edits to the proof and got that submitted on Saturday morning. Let's see, I have some nice. I'm going to show a few pictures here too. Share screen, screen one. All right. So last week, I had our ham radio station at the university is coming along. You can see we have a nice poster up here. Here's our room. It's got all full of stuff. Jeff DePolo's pulling the coax, working on that. We had an antenna build night where I had a few students come by, and Tom, he was a real champ. We put together our M squared long boom 440 megahertz circularly polarized antenna, satellite antenna. So you can see we kind of made it through to the end of the night, and there's Tom with the nice antenna. So that's going to go up on our roof. We still have to do the 2-meter one, still more to be assembled, but that's coming along. The other nice news is that the grape project, that's been going along really nicely. The New England Grape Group came up with this really beautiful it's a breadboard design. You can see they used an actual breadboard to put the to put the grape on. So here's the grape, there's Leo Bodner GPS, there is the Raspberry Pi, and they very nicely assembled it and shipped 15 of those out, and I got one of them. I was able to hook it up, and you can see that there's some of the first light data of that. As we were letting that collect, Rachel, Anthony, and I, we went over to see some pumpkins, which was quite fun on Sunday. And then when we got home, you could see that the grape was still working and it's collecting data. And this data is out now all going to Bill Engelke's server. And on his system, on the server system, he now does have, at least on the back end, he has the ability to make daily summary plots that show the spectrum, 24-hour spectrum from each station that uploads data. And he's working with his team now to to make sure that that is available through the web interface as well. It's not available yet publicly, but they're working on it. So I think there's really good work there. I'm also happy to say that with the other Eclipse projects, we've had tremendously good public relations. If you go to ARRL, we're still the first article on ARRL.org right now, and we've just had so many really nice media hits. We were on the front page of Radio Amateurs Canada. I was interviewed by NPR the other day. That played on our local NPR station. If you Google Hamsci and you go to media hits, you can see that we're keeping track of all of the media hits that we're getting. And these are all the ones that have come out. Mackenzie KO4GLN. She is a student down at Old Dominion University and president of their ham radio club. She wrote a beautiful article on the impact of solar eclipses and the structure and dynamics of the Earth's upper atmosphere that came out on NASA's website. It was also picked up by phys.org. We were Popular Science, Hamsai Eclipse. They did an article mostly on Radio Jove. Let's see. Popular Science, mostly on Radio Jove, but they also did mention Hamsai as well on there. So citizen scientists can join a Ring of Fire eclipse radio experiment. And so that's again mostly Radio Jove with Chuck Higgins, who's one of my friends. And if you look down at the bottom, you can see, yeah, NASA has a long list of other opportunities. For example, if you're a ham radio operator, you can get involved with Hamsai. So we've been doing really, really well with that. Let's see some other bits of news. I think one thing I'd like to talk about tonight again is how Dave Witten's doing on. I'm curious to see how his boards are coming out, and we tried following up on some of the magnetometer design files the other day, and I know some people sent me all the magnetometer design files they had, and I started to look at them, but we need to figure out if those actually are the final files or if we still need to get to Scotty. I've been calling him, texting him, trying to track him down to get the final design files, but I think I really want to get the magnetometer paper kind of wrapped up this year, because I think that the magnetometer is in a good position that Tapper can produce them and sell them. I want to make sure we can actually do that, and we're on our first no cost extension. So I'd really like to be able to say, okay, we have this paper, at least submitted, under review, the things for sale in the Tapper, through the Tapper store. Let's get the magnetometer project wrapped up. And then, I think we're still going to need to ask for another no cost extension for the Tangerine or Clementine. But it'd be really nice to kind of wrap up the magnetometer and say, okay, we have that, we've done it, and now we can, move on to the next thing. So that's a lot of news. I'll turn it back to Nat.
Okay. Next on the list is Bob, N5BRG. Go ahead, Bob.
Hello, everyone. I'm still busily here working on trying to get my actually pair of grapes up running. I've got everything built and hooked up to the antennas and started trying to analyze what was coming out of them with GNU radio, and wasn't seeing much of a signal. So I've gone back and starting to study it, trying to understand what the holdup is. So I'm still working on that. Relative to the magnetometer, I have been collecting data, and that's been passed up to Dave Witten's server. I haven't started passing it up to the other server that Bill has. But I thought when I got the grape running, I'd pass all that data at once. But there's 2 or 3 months worth of data on that magnetometer that came from Tapper. So I believe it's working the way it should. It looks pretty good to me. And anyway, I've got 3 or 4 other projects along these lines going as well. So back to you.
Very good. Next on the list is Dave, KD0 EAG. Go ahead, Dave.
Hello. Yes. I have been, I sent off the first set of prototyping boards to China. And I was trying to get them there and back before the current holiday, but it looks like I might have missed it by 1 day. I was getting recommendations right to the last minute from folks who are helping me, and so they have been. The last note I have is that they are waiting for DHL to pick them up. I doubt that's really the situation, but China really does, shut down when they say they do. That's supposed to be over tomorrow, and the boards are fabricated, and it's just when they'll get back. And I think I probably paid a little extra to get them fairly quick. Um, and I had planned to move, well, I did make a couple of clones of the original design and was starting to move forward with it a little bit into the next stage. But of course, I have earlier ones where I tried to replicate Oscar designs completely. But then I backed up to having a minimal thing to have sent off. So now I'm going to migrate stuff onto the boards that I'm working with, and hopefully that will move quickly. I had hoped to have those ready to, the next step ready to go when the minute that I received the ones that are already in process, but had family health problems that kind of disrupted that. My mother broke her hip and is so I've been having to spend a lot of time down at the local emergency room and such like, but I think that's getting cleared up, and I'll be moving forward and asking more questions, I assume, forthwith. I also went back to the older magnetometer designs that I was working on, which are a little less elegant perhaps than what Scotty designed, but they were some of the same things that occurred to me. And so I was looking at having a pair of those fabbed for me too, if I can find the parts. And the so I have been just cleaning those up in case anyone ever wants to make more of them for any reason. And I have, mine are fully documented. Scotty's documentation is, I believe I've sent you everything I can find. I really have looked. Now, there's an awful lot in that schematic. There's a lot of information that is actually in the first or second page, notes in there about jumper settings and pin values and stuff. So there's a lot of information in there, but there is and never has been, as far as I know, a typical bomb, that which is the one thing, it'd be really nice to have. So that's what I know on that subject. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the list is David in 1HAC. Go ahead, David.
Good evening, everyone. Working on various things this past week, just including getting over a cold. Much of us went to the Big E exposition to support an ARRL booth, and I think I may have picked up something last weekend, but let's see. I'm a little concerned that we're not going to have our system running for this next eclipse because it's been disassembled, and trying to get some receivers back up and running, but they're being balky. Internet, our server, they're not sending data back, and we unfortunately have changed IT personnel. The guy who set it up for us decided to retire. I mean, why would anybody retire from this kind of work? but the new guy is having a little difficulty getting up on it. But we'll see what we can do in a couple of weeks. But looking forward to whatever happens. Maybe I can get something on the air or a receiver. Also contributing to the science. So That's about it. Our trees are finally turning, by the way. Wasn't sure whether they were going to be on time, but all of a sudden now they're going. Because it's been so wet, weather definitely modulates when the leaves turn, but it's beginning to look nice over here. So back to net.
Okay. Next on the list is Franco, K4VZ. Go ahead, Franco.
Thanks, David. Good evening, everyone. A couple of things I've been working on. I created an extension for K9Q radio to be able to control the frequency of the reference. So instead of 27 megahertz, you can put a different frequency. I haven't tested that. I created a branch called RX88-SI5351, which contains all the changes. So it should be something to test, especially if you want to use a Bodnar or something that doesn't come out at 27. And then also, Rob, I created an extra addition. I sent you an email probably 20 minutes ago, where I also added an option to add a command after the split. So basically, if you split the file, you can also compress it automatically for those files that you store. And last but not least, I'm happy that Tom figured out the problem with the routers. Back to Nat.
Very good. Next, let's see, would be Jay, WV8 SBI. Go ahead, Jay.
Oh, good evening, everybody here. Not really a whole heck of a lot to report from up here, so I won't hold it, Nathaniel. I'm just about to hit the send button on an email to you. So, other than that, I'll say 73 to everybody. Catch you later on down the log. Take care. Stay safe.
Okay. Next on the list is Joe, W7LUX. Go ahead, Joe.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, it's just been busy here. Both the original grape setup and the Eclipse grape setup have been working flawlessly. And I hear other people having problems, but for some reason mine just plugs right along. And the data is being sent back daily to Alabama, although I don't see much updates on their website concerning my particular contributions. Thanks, Dave.
Okay. Next on the list is Jonathan, KC3EY. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hi, everybody. I've been pretty busy, but non-VLF related stuff. Some Cisco networking and ADSL kind of stuff, but not really VLF related. But lately, at least the past couple weeks, there have been quite a lot of solar flares that have been visible. In the VLF transmitter data, which is really nice. Also, a blast from the past. This time 2 years ago, or at least around this time, October of 2021. Nathaniel, if you remember, that's when you and we were in the process of trenching. And I remember because it was unseasonably warm and humid, and it was unseasonal. It's unseasonably warm and humid right now, so it kind of brought me back. But that was a lot of fun, a lot of work, but a lot of fun, and it definitely paid off. I also received an email from Bill Lyles. I haven't had a chance to respond to it, but it was concerning it looks like a professor or somebody was wondering if you would see an effect in VLF transmitter data during an eclipse. From what I've seen from people's past data and past experiences, is that there is an effect, kind of like a temporary nighttime effect, or a temporary dusk or dawn. or well, dusk and dawn. And I'm very curious to see what would happen. I don't know if there would be an effect for the October eclipse at the VLF receiver here in Pennsylvania. Maybe depending on the path, but I'm not sure. Those Navy transmitters might be too far and too weak, but we'll have to see. But for the April eclipse, definitely there should definitely be an effect. So what you should see is a peak during totality, and that peak is the peak in the amplitude level, and that is the simulated dusk and dawn effect and temporary nighttime of the D layer. So I'm really excited to see that. Hopefully I could get some VLF receivers out there by that time, and we could have some more data. What would be useful is that the Stanford SID group, they would also have quite a bit of data too regarding this. There's also a receiver in Forest, Virginia, that will be also recording during the April eclipse. So that's something we could all look forward to. I'm still kind of plugging along on the VLF, on the 3-channel VLF system, and hopefully we'll eventually start, or at least very soon start, on the H field receiver, the orthogonal loop receiver to complement the E field receiver. That's all I have. Back to the net.
Okay. Next on the list is Michael. Oh, go
quick
ahead.
question. Jonathan, you did read Morris Cohen's 2017 eclipse paper, right?
Yes, I did actually. It could, and I believe he referenced another paper which I read, and it did show the same effect. I'll have to look at it. Did you post it in the chat?
Yes, it's in the chat. So
Okay.
it definitely shows the eclipse effect in the transmitters, and I would imagine we'd probably see it here even for the annular, so we should definitely look. The Joe Huba Sammy 3 does predict a depletion, so I would expect to see it.
Okay, well, in that case, the VLF server is monitoring about 17 VLF transmitters currently right now. So all that data is being recorded. So we will definitely have it for the October eclipse. So I'll be sure to look through all that data to see if we have an effect.
Awesome.
Okay. Next on the list is Michael, AC0G. Go ahead, Michael.
Good evening, everybody. I've been pretty busy at work the past week, unfortunately, but and also suffered a unfortunate blip in one of the RX 888s I have, where it just suddenly failed to be recognized by either Linux or Windows machines. I set it aside for a day, went back in and woefully tried it again, and lo and behold, it came back to life. Don't know why. The other frustration I have with that particular device is that I've attached a pigtail to the GPS-DO input, and I have a mini GPS-DO from Leo Bodnar attached to it, and I don't think it's working properly. So I'm eager to potentially see what Franco's code might provide as an alternative that will make it work correctly. In the meantime, I'm consoling myself with the fact that I'm still supplying 5 megahertz WWV frequency data to the standard old style grape update, And I'm supplying, since March, I think it is, some magnetometer data to Dave Witten's server. That's it for me. Back to Net.
Very good. And next on the list is Phil, K9Q. Go ahead, Phil.
Hi, guys. I've been pretty busy with KNIQ Radio. Franco, I really got to catch up on all the nice little tweaks you've been making. I'm sorry that I haven't been looking at them, but I've been busy.
No
with
big deal,
I've
Phil.
been doing.
I know you're busy.
Yeah. I seem to have fixed Tom's packet loss problem. I put in a pacing feature that on large transmissions puts a little delay between each packet. And it seems to fix this problem at the cost of a little more CPU time because short delays are actually expensive. So I really think this problem is still best solved by in hardware, but at least I fixed the problem now. Let's see what else I've been doing. Just lots of little fixes. You can see I've been updating the Git repository pretty frequently. A lot of them are trivial, little cleanups. Some of them are major. I try to put out informative Git commit messages if I can, but it's really hard. Quite a few of them say like more cowbell and stuff like that, especially in the middle of the night. Anyway, that's about it. If you have questions later, I'll be happy to help.
Okay, we're trying to get through. We're almost through the list. I did see Michael AAK jump in there. So, Michael, do you have a comment?
Hi, thank you. Sorry I'm late. Family issue. My camera doesn't seem to be working. I did want to leave to try to fix that. Greetings to everyone listening, and back to you, Dave.
Okay. Next, I'd like to call on Tom because he usually has a short report. So, Tom, go ahead.
All right.
N5EG.
Good evening, Dave and everyone. Well, as Franco and Phil mentioned, we got the packet loss problem fixed, and I really appreciate more than an abundant amount of help from both of these guys to get this done. It's tremendous. I played around a lot with jumbo frames over the week, but it didn't really fix things. And the packet pacing, as soon as I turned that on, all the packet loss problems just stopped on the routers I have. And so I managed to blow up one router. You shouldn't plug a 12-volt router into a 19-volt computer wall wart. It's not real good for them. Fortunately, I got on YouTube and found out that there's a lot of other people had the same problem. And they put a protection diode right across the barrel jack before the switch. And that protection diode, when you over voltage it, turns into a dead short. And so by the time you get the switch turned on, it has saved the router. So the hardest part of the project is opening up the router and finding out where all the little plastic snap tabs are that are hidden from view. Got it up, replaced the diode with a Zener, and it's back working. So hopefully they'll get a test, but I don't envision that one's going to have any issues either. The problem, I think, is what we used to call micro bursting, which is in the past been known to cause some routers issues where you get a whole ton of packets in a row, densely spaced. It was a bigger problem in the past before hardware took over the chores of doing TCP and UDP sequencing. So I think Phil's got his finger right on the issue there, and I'm much appreciative. Next up, we'll be starting on the RX-888. And I think I have everything to modify it except the thermal pad. And I don't know if I need to order one, if I can find a small piece of thermal pad to modify it, but that'll be the next step in the list. So back to the net, and thanks to everyone for the help.
Okay. So next on the list is Robinette, AI6VN. Go ahead, Rob.
Hello. Let's see. Before I forget, I've deployed RX-888 at both KFS and at KBH in last week. And for those of you who are trying to feed a Bogner, into a 888, you need to really, I mean, my experience is that you can't just feed them directly in. I put an SMA T connector and put a 50 ohm terminator at the back of the 888, which is, of course, reduces the signal level, and set the Wagner to 16 milliamps of output current. So 50 ohm terminator and 16 milliamps, and I get very stable results. If you do an unterminated, I think you overdrive the RX 888 5351 input. So if you're trying to use a Wagner with the 888, that's my experience. In fact, I've been able to daisy chain multiple 888s and just put a terminator at the end of the daisy chain. And just as long as you're sure that you turn off remove the jumper, because if you the jumper in the 888, the effect of it is to supply power or remove power to the internal oscillator. So if you leave the internal oscillator on, okay, then you have fighting clocks. You've got the internal clock feeding the same cable as is coming from the Wagner. So those are two experiences. I've experienced both of those. In unstable operation from unterminated and fighting clocks when you have multiples. I have now the 888 running at, as I say, a GPS discipline at KFS, so that we have, I'm doing this in anticipation of the eclipse being all set up for the eclipse. I had 5 hours of driving to get out and back to KPH, and got out there and learned that there was no, the GPS RF from the antenna on the roof had disappeared, and I had no spare with me. So I'm going to go out and again next Saturday. Thanks that now that our government isn't shutting down, I can get access to the facility next Saturday. So another 5 hours of driving. But my goal is to have both of those sites GPS stabilized RX 888s, receiving all of the whisper bands, and of course logging them and I'm working on right now using Franco's code. I've established that I can record the full output. 64.8 megasample output can be recorded sustainably to a single rotating hard disk, and which really kind of surprised me. It turns out that the ZSTD compression utility that I used compresses the samples by just about 50%. And it does so in under a minute. So I can on a single core of the CPU. So I can have spun off a process that does the recording records the raw data, and that's 7.3 gigabytes per minute. Records that to a RAM disk, and then have a second process running the compression algorithm that compresses that down to 3.4 megabits, something like 70 or 80 megabytes, and that can be written to a hard disk. So a single hard disk. So the 5 terabyte hard disk I have should be able to store on the order of 5 hours of continuous recording. I'm going to verify that this week, but that's so. I don't know if anybody's going to use this data. It's a massive amount of data, and I don't know. It would be I could set it up easily. It's works incredibly reliably thanks to Franco's split program and the RX streamer program. It's very easy. You just RX streamer, pipe it to the split, and it split writes files, so you could have it. So if you know of anyone who would use it, that's my question, is if anybody would use it.
People
Well,
will find a use for it.
Yep.
I think one of the things that I was interested in doing, it wouldn't be for this year's Hamsci workshop, but maybe for next year's Hamsci workshop, is to have some sort of Eclipse data grand challenge where we post all this data, including like this very large data sets, and make an announcement to the community. Here's all this data. Let's maybe have a contest or something to see who can come up with the best presentation using it at the Hamsci workshop.
Everybody's going to fire up new radio and find something to do with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, if you think it's useful, I have to get another computer and to put and hard disk, and I have enough R888, so I could do full spectrum recording at actually 3 sites. I could even see. Yeah, then maybe anyway. I could do it out at Winnemucca if I can make it out there. I don't the question is, I can generate a tremendous amount of data. I just don't want to do what's most useful. And I think that the one thing that's most useful, and I haven't done, is to implement the IQ record mode for the whisper bands. So that I need to get. But it's so intriguing to run to do this full sample recording is such a grand challenge compute problem that I've been distracted by it. Anyway, those are my activities, and I'd be happy to take priority direction from you. But by default, my intention is to record IQs. 16 kilosample IQs for all of the bands, in addition to, of course, doing the spot data. But that's and those will be much smaller. I don't know. Again, I don't know where I'd archive even those IQ files, but I assume there'll be a place for them someplace.
And they're how big? Well, you have the 5 terabyte ones, but what are your next sizes?
Oh, well, what I'm doing is I'm recording a series of 1 minute long files.
Okay.
So it'll be a round robin cache. So
Yeah.
at some point, so it'll be a series of 1 minute long. They're just raw sample files compressed. So there's nothing, and of course it's GPS stabilized. And,
yeah. If they're 50 gigabytes or less, you can store them. You can archive them on Zenodo for free without any trouble.
Yeah, that's 50 gigabytes is like compressed. That's like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Are you using FLAC or what?
I'm using ZSTD.
Dave,
because I know it, and it's compressing. It's very CPU efficient.
If we do want to use this for like a grand challenge sort of thing, Dave Pasco does have a significant amount of server space that he has offered that we could post some very large data files to, and then we could, make them available to the community for a time.
Okay, well, I was planning to do, I think that these, the full spectrum recording, I think probably an hour before and after, so maybe a couple hours of recording.
Yeah.
And that would be, that would be on the order of, 2 to 3 terabytes. Anyway, I think that given that there's the level of interest that you're expressing, I'll try to make those recordings and save those discs away. I mean, it's $100 disc. It's not that much for a 5 terabyte drive these days. So
no,
but it's
obviously anybody who wants it's going to have to send you their own disk drive.
Yes, they're going to have to send me a disk drive to copy. I was considered using a NVMe internal drive, which is actually not a whole lot more expensive than. It's amazing. I was surprised.
They're fantastic.
Yeah, they are fantastic. The problem is that I looked at it, and even the high quality ones, the Samsung CVOs and the Western Digitals, have a total a budget of on the order of I forget whether it's 10,000 terabytes or something. Well, geez, I could wear out a disk with an RX888. I could wear out an NVMe disk in a day with the amount of data gets thrown at it. So you cannot archive this data to an NVMe drive practically. I mean, you can do it once, you can do it once, but you can't have just a kind of continuous, round robin recording going on. So that's why I chose the rotating media, so storage.
Wait a minute, you said the
destination.
limit is 10,000 terabytes?
Yeah, total. I mean, I think I saw the Samsung or Western Digital was touting how wonderful their NVMe drive was, and because it was guaranteed that you could write 10,000 terabytes or something to it, and that's that's a week worth of
That's
data.
10
So
petabytes. How long does it
no,
take
wait, yeah, what's that?
No, that's 10 petabytes. 10,000 terabytes is 10 petabytes. How long does it take you to generate 10 petabytes?
Well, let's see. It's let's see. You get 1 terabyte. You get about 1 terabyte per hour.
Okay, so that's 10,000 hours.
Yeah, 10,000 hours. So I don't know. It's I just didn't want to have to worry about wearing out somebody's NVMe, and so
yeah, if you're writing sequentially, then a spinning drive is not so bad.
Yeah, it works fine. In fact, one issue might be I haven't had any problem with the regular ext4 drive format. I mean, file format, but that's I may move to a different. Anyway, that's my report.
Well, I think that's everybody.
Dave,
do you have any other people you see?
No, but if you're ready to move on to the general discussion, I was wondering if we could chat a little bit more about the magnetometer situation.
Sure. Yeah. So let's talk about magnetometers.
So it seems like Dave Whitten, you have your original set of well-documented magnetometer design files, right?
Yes. I have the old ones and I have newer ones. Some of the documentation all exists, but putting it into a nice readable form might take a little effort. But
right.
Yes. So
would it make sense to switch over to your version of the magnetometer and try to do a hardware X paper on that and try and put that in the Tapper store instead of what Scotty's version?
Well, I think Tapper's already invested quite a bit in
and it virtually there are very few small changes.
So wait, when you say yes, Dave, KV0S, you think yes that we should use Dave Whitten's design, or yes,
well,
we should
stick. We need to document all the designs that we have.
Yeah. Hold on, I'll be right back.
Okay. But the idea being we need to capture what we've created, and the major changes that Scotty made were moving parts around, making things surface mounted, and I don't know, Dave, what any
Sorry,
other things
I'm back.
Significant that he changed?
Well, no, he turned parts around and he changed the default settings and used slightly different, used a different voltage regulator and this and that.
So to me, that's a variant of the design.
Yeah. Weren't 500 of the Scotty design made?
I think about 200.
250, I think.
But if
I think 250 sets.
Maybe it was 250 sets.
So, I mean, we're kind of tied to the hardware. You just need to document it properly.
Let me mention that I purchased one from Tapper, and it came to me, as a kit, although it was mostly assembled. And so it would, I guess, be the board that Scotty produced.
Yes.
And then I took that and I used Dave Witten's instructions. So I wasn't like studying the hardware side of things. I just followed his instructions and set it all up, set up the software, and I got it running. I saw a couple of minor things that could be improved in his instructions, but I was going to
Yes.
write them up, but I never did do it. But I could try to look back at that and resurrect that.
In any case, I should revisit those instructions because there's a few things that could be clarified and simplified. But
One aspect of that would be whether or not you want the data to continue to come to your server, or should it go to Bill Engelke's server now?
Well, I'm actually sending data both to Dave's server and Bill Engelke's server. So there's no one or the other. You can do both.
Yeah, you could do that. You could just sync to both places, right?
I think what I would really like to see happen, I think I've got two goals. One is I'd like to make sure that we have in the Tapper shop a ground magnetometer that is a kit that's sellable and makeable again. So
Yes.
so the version that Scotty has, do we have the design files to reproduce that if we need to?
No, and he'd use proprietary software to do the design. He used his in-house design person to do the board design.
So that's a real problem.
And then what he gives you on the website is a PDF, which is the schematic, which tells you what is going on. Now, Dave has his own board production files. So those you still have, don't you, Dave?
Yeah, I was freshening them up because I kind of got a little weary and a little frustrated working on them. There didn't seem to be any future for them, so I left them alone. But like this morning, I spent the morning cleaning up the schematics, and they're there, and I'll put them up on GitHub, and I'll make them available to anyone who wants them. It's an open design. It's the predecessor to what Scotty did, and he didn't make any profound changes. There's something about it that was supposed to make sure there wasn't any interrupt conflict, but it seems to cause some confusion sometimes.
Yeah.
The only problem I see with continuing to use Scotty's, and I don't feel this is a big problem. The surface mount pin headers are fragile on them. There's a couple of them. That's the thing that bothers me about handling them. I've broken every one that I've gotten my hands on.
And I built all the versions, both Dave's and Scotty's, and I broke off some of the surface mounted jumper pins.
I broke off one too, but they're not very hard to repair.
No.
And in terms of his software, I don't see that as a problem. If he'll give you the Gerber files, which I think he probably will, that gives you the ability to manufacture boards. The only thing you couldn't do is go back and make edits or changes without relaying the board out in other software.
But the problem is I have been trying for over a month to try to get, or about a month to get Scotty to just respond to my phone calls or my emails or texts. So it's like, supposedly if I can get in contact with him, he'd give me the Gerber files, but like no one can reach him.
No.
And that's
I've been
really
trying this
concerning.
week, and I've not been able to get a hold of him.
Yeah. So I do think that if I could reach him, or if we could reach him, I do think in principle he would be willing to give us all the design files. But I think I think the matter is he just doesn't want to be contacted for whatever reason.
but I do encourage Dave Witten to with his recent experience working on these radio designs, I think he could clean up his own files and then store them so that they're available.
I will
Yeah.
point out one difference is that Dave's does not plug straight onto a Pi.
Oh,
Mine's not what?
Doesn't plug straight onto the Pi.
You know, the version I'm working with now does. Well, I had gone that direction before Scotty ever really started
Okay,
working
I
on it.
guess that, well, I have your earlier version and then I have Scott.
Yeah, you have one of the very earliest ones, and those are pretty crummy. I was working fast, trying to get something out, and I sent you a terrible kit.
well,
But if you if you
But,
figured
well,
it out,
but the bottom line is we've got 250 sets of the
yes,
Scotty
I just-
design. Let's just get it documented. I mean, if we have to
Yes.
reverse engineer it, we do have the schematic, right?
yes.
I know I've seen it.
We have all the schematics, and Scotty didn't substantially change the schematics.
No, as said, really, the primary change was a little bit different addressing.
The only other problem I was concerned about on the thing is the power coming from the computer. Maybe needed more buffering or a better power supply. And I worry that some of the power supply noise could be coming into the magnetic data, but maybe you guys have already.
No, it's with the voltage regulators in the way, it should be fine.
So what do you think would be the best route? Like I would really love to see that Hardware X paper, which Yeoman and Dave have started. I'd love to see us bring that to completion. And if we can do that properly using the Scotty design, I think that's great. But I think, with publishing that paper, I really want to make sure that the design is available too.
You'd have to check with Yeoman, but my impression was the main thing that's missing in the at least that I couldn't find anything, was a bomb, that was among the requested documentation. But though I don't know, did they really ask for the ORCAD files? I don't believe so. But we can jump on that any way we can. I don't think there's anything absolute. Sometimes I don't know where Hillman is on that. So
yeah, I think he got distracted onto other things.
Yes.
He, like me, is juggling a lot of, balls in the air. And in fact, I know that my wife is working with him on a paper right now looking at Antarctic magnetometer data and, just trying to get his attention on that. We got comments back from him there. So it's just, I think I have to keep pulling his attention back to this. Yeah. So are you suggesting, we have PDFs of the schematics, but we don't have Gerber files and we don't have CAD files, or?
Yeah, essentially Scotty used the guy who did all the design on all the boards, did the board layouts.
Right.
He did the work. He sent them to the CM in Arizona to have them manufactured. The problem for Scotty too is that since those boards were manufactured, he has sold his business building. And he was working in his basement. He sold his previous house,
Right.
and he's living in a
Trailer.
A travel trailer, 30-foot travel trailer next to the build site for his new house.
Right.
So
we knew.
if it may be very difficult if the other people don't have copies for him to find what box or where it's stored until, and then who knows how long that'll take to sort out.
Yeah. Because I think in the way I'd like to do this, I would like, well, when Tapper releases like hardware designs, what do they typically under like the OHL? What files do they typically release?
I have known that Scotty doesn't like to release everything that will allow somebody to reproduce without, they basically want to hold on to the privilege to manufacture. And so,
but this is not a commercial situation.
no.
And Nathaniel paid for it, so
yeah. So
you should be entitled to.
And it's not just me that I'm entitled to. It should really be, it's taxpayer dollars here.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
This is NSF money. So I think the way I would like to see this happen is I'd like to see it released publicly, published publicly, so that the community could get the maximum benefit from it.
So there are really two routes here. One is we should capture and document Scotty's work.
Yeah.
But I also would encourage Dave Whitten to continue to build with his open source software a version that could be modified by other people if they want to, because I know the design procedure that Scotty used would be you'd have to sit down and redraw the board.
Yeah.
Unless you actually happen to use the same software, and the software they were using is becoming less and less used.
Is there, and we don't have those ORCAD files? Because is that the software that you're talking about, ORCAD?
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's no way you can't take ORCAD
Scotty
files
just kept hold of those.
So we don't have them.
Yeah, but
I'm pretty sure.
I mean, he should be able to email them if he can get a hold of them.
But
well,
the two problems
I think right now we have to assume that we cannot get a hold of Scotty. I think we really have to make the assumption that we just are not going to hear from Scotty in the near future on any timeline that we would hope to complete the project.
Yes. The one possible solution is to see if Dan Babcock could help us, because he does work with Zephyr. He has a different project, and he knows the people, and he knows Scotty very well. And he was talking about going out to Arizona for a month sometime this year, but I don't know when.
There was also another option that I just thought of. It may be possible to contact the company that did the board manufacturing.
We don't know who that is.
Yeah.
And that's the one where Scotty would have to tell them it's okay to release.
Yes.
Info.
Yeah.
Oh, Nathaniel wasn't
he's
given
been
any.
very opaque about who he's dealing with.
Yeah. So I have a time.
He's very proprietary by nature, I think.
I have a time dependent thing I have to do at 9 o'clock my time, which is 1 minute. So I'm gonna have to jump off this list and go do that. So
okay. That sounds well. Thank you, Dave.
I'm happy to discuss this more.
Yeah, I'd really like to try to find a way to bring this paper and this part of the project to a conclusion.
Yeah.
Nathaniel?
Yes, Steve.
If it turns out that the bill of materials is really something that those people want, that's the main hang up. we can make a bill of materials manually by just,
Okay.
there aren't that many parts on the board. And
Yeah.
just reading the schematics, I think he's labeled all the parts well enough
Yeah.
to do that.
If your design is not that different, and you have the open source KiCad files, would it, and it if it is so similar, would it make sense to just use your design instead?
I can do that.
Because
And we can provide that. That was that was what we prototyped. You know, that captures the essential behavior of the device. And got Scotty's version was a polished, supposedly professionalized version of it. But you know,
but I think we're going to value open source and accessible over polished at this point. I think
that I'm agreeable.
Yeah. I think that's and then in the future, you know, I know we're selling Scotty's boards through Tapper right now, but if we did another run, we could do your version instead, right?
I'll try to have a nice manufacturable and version available should you want to do that. But I do think we have quite a few of the others, and I don't think there's a compelling reason not to use them.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I think you need to
the
be
compelling
careful about making sure that you let Tapper's inventory play out before you start, if you do something else, especially if it's cheaper.
Yeah, that's what I want. I would want that too. I don't want to see Tapper stuck with them. But but I have an alternative for people who might find them difficult to work with. I've been going back and forth with John Gibbon, and I've found
is there
Tapper boards difficult to diagnose. He's had some odd behavior, you know, integrating it with his grape too.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to tell him because I haven't, the test points aren't there that I kind of like to have.
So what you're saying too is you don't want to publish your open source designs until Tapper's current inventory is sold out.
I don't care about publishing them. I just want to, I don't want to replace Tapper's inventory until they've had a chance to sell them. That's all.
Oh, well, that's fine. So here's how kind of I imagine this right now. What if for the goal of the Hardware X paper is to produce something that's open source that we could say in the future you can go to this paper and you can reproduce this. But what if we publish that, but yeah, the Tapper store for now just sells Scotty's design, just sells that out, and then you know, it's a slightly different variant, but that's okay. The paper doesn't have to exactly match what Tapper's selling. And then when that sells out, then you can replace it with the version that's published.
I'm happy to go that path.
Because what I'm concerned with is that if we publish Scotty's design and we don't have the BOM and all the right files and stuff, then there's really no basis to easily work from in the future or to recreate it. And really what I want the Hardware X paper to be is something that, yeah, you actually could work from and, you know, reproduce and modify. And
we can do that. We can do that.
Okay.
As far as having them, final, you know, I'd like to have them on. Some of them are on OSH Park, the boards, in fact, so people can just order the boards. But I'd like to have the whole thing at like JLC PCB. So, you know, click here, send your money, and you'll get your boards. But I had, you know, it'll take a few weeks to get it complete, that part all tested. But, and I
Yeah.
don't want to hold up the paper for that.
No. Well, I think if we're using your design, we could probably you can probably give Hyomin the information to basically get a good draft of the paper done now.
Mhm.
And then
If that's the only thing that's holding him up, and
yeah,
um, I, I perhaps should have been more proactive about that, but
yeah.
at the
Well,
point that that began, I was
mhm.
a little frustrated.
Well, I think as we all know that this certain things have happened in this project that are not the way we hoped they would go. But I think I think we're doing the best we can do. And yeah.
Yeah, and I would love to have a fully open design up there for anyone who asks.
Right. And that's my intention too.
And really my designs are the ones that Jules spent so much time evaluating and testing, characterizing.
Yeah.
So they really ought to be sufficient for
Okay.
anyone who needs them.
Yeah, I think if you're able to do that, let's try to get
Should I prioritize it above the RX 888?
probably well, I
Okay.
think so. I think so because I think if you make a good push on this, I think we can get something that's publishable by the end of within the next something we might be able to submit within the next couple of months. What do you think?
I don't know about the state of it, the rest of it, but I can certainly get that part of it.
Okay. Because I think my hope or my plan is to basically go to the NSF with this particular grant and be like, okay, we have made progress on the RX 888. You know, we kind of back in May and June we did a 180 on the design for the Tangerine SDR. You know, we're using this other design. It's coming along. We're going to ask for another no cost extension on that part. However, with the magnetometer portion, you know, we pretty much have this wrapped up. Here's a nice published paper. Here's a here's a nice published paper. Here's a hardware design that came out of it. Yeah, it's available from Tapper. Yes, it's not exactly the same one in the paper, but you know, the reason we published the one in the paper is because that's a totally open source design. You know, you can get these things. And then also on that same grant, University of Alabama, they still have their portion open, and they've made tremendous progress with the Personal Space Weather Station website. So their website is now actively ingesting not only magnetometer data, it's also actively ingesting the GRAPE data, which it wasn't doing before. And Bill is, as if you saw in the comments, Bill AB4EJ, his team now, they have code that will generate summary plots from the digital RF data on a daily basis. And from talking to him today, it sounds like they're like weeks away from getting it actually deployed on the server. They do have it, you know, running, so it will run on the server, just doesn't show up on the web page yet. So I think we can show a reasonable amount of progress on those fronts, and then we can continue to focus our efforts on the Clementine after that.
Okay. Fine with me.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then along with that, we'll also be able to show good progress. You know, if Phil and Franco are okay, you know, we could talk about the progress that you've made with the RX 888 and your software.
Yeah,
If you
that's
don't,
massive.
yeah, if you don't mind me including that in the annual report.
For me, it's perfectly okay. It's more Phil software, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I'd of course give you credit and say like,
I
you
don't
know,
know.
this
Yeah,
is
but Phil is
yeah.
I'm
your
happy to find
brain
use
here.
for it.
What's that?
I'm happy to find a use for it.
Yeah, so basically I would write in the report something like, you know, we had this other, it'd be a very similar report to what I wrote back in June where I asked for a rebudget. Basically say, you know, we had this original approach with the FPGA that turned out to not be viable for XYZ reasons. You know, we decided to put our focus here. So then we can say, all right, we have Phil Karn, Franco, Tom, Rob Robinette have been able to, develop the software this far on this particular platform. And then we can also say Dave Witten has, done a good job starting to prototype this into our own piece of equipment. He's ordered a few boards. We'd ask for another year to keep spending down the rest of the funding to keep working on it. But then that'll show really good progress on the Clementine. And at the same time, we're bringing the magnetometer part to a little bit of closure.
By the way, Dave, how close is your newest schematic to Scotty's schematic?
Mm. I couldn't I don't know I don't know what metric to use.
Okay, I'm just curious. I just brought up the documentation that Scotty had sent us. So we do have the schematic. We do have the board assembly drawings. So, we can't build it, but we know what it is and can tell people how to work with it.
Yeah.
And if we needed to regenerate a bill of materials, that would not be that difficult.
Yeah. Well, we can do both these things.
Yep.
I guess the question then I'm trying to figure out is what's the best way to write that paper?
Now I will say a lot of scientific papers, they don't tell you how to build it. They give you enough information to know how it's working. But
yeah, I agree with that. It's just this particular journal, Hardware X, is all about building open source hardware.
Right. Well, that's a good point.
It's a little bit of it's not your typical scientific paper.
Okay. I think we may have two problems here. One is to properly document what Tapper is selling. But then have something for this paper, which sounds like it would be better to use Dave's version because we can fully document it and put it out as open source.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what we're sending people of when they order the Tapper kits. Do we just point them at the installation instructions?
That's mostly folks who've asked. I've walked a few people through it, but which is sometimes a challenge. But but I'm happy to do that. And I know my documentation just needs some tweaking. It's out of date. I wrote it at least 2 years ago, and it wasn't intended, for the situation we're at right now. I'm surprised it fits as well as it does, but things could be made clearer. And there were a lot of things. I had to buy another set of the Tapper boards because I found myself not knowing exactly how they behaved. And some people were having some odd things. I haven't done anything with them, but mine, I'd knocked all the jumpers off mine, and so I couldn't tell them how to jumper them or not. And so I have a pair sitting in there. I hope I haven't put them under something that'll knock them apart again.
Do you have those files, Dave, that Scotty sent us?
Well, I just uploaded. You want me to forward you those?
No, I have them. I'm just asking.
I don't know. You had mentioned something. Yeah,
I just found an email that Scotty had sent us that has the design files in it, at least as far as to know what's on the board.
Yeah. Well, if you would you mind forwarding that to me just so I can double check?
Sure.
The one I sent to Yeoman and to Nathaniel and Tom sent to me does look like it was the final schematic. It's the he's got them labeled as the revision as far as I can tell. I never did completely understand his naming scheme that he uses.
Yeah.
But it was complicated.
Well, let's see.
That's always the fun part of this. Everything else.
Take a look down in the corner. He says XA9 rev on the schematic.
Yeah, I don't know what that's got to do with anything.
And as for the
somewhere there's a Rev E, maybe on the board itself.
Oh, Rev E, really? Because the picture I have says Magneto Pi Hat Rev A.
Oh, that's an old one. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty old. Oh, right. Yeah, the that's with the Ethernet connector the other direction. And I have the board I actually have that I got from him is a Rev D.
Rev C or
D. Delta.
Yeah, those are a little different.
Yeah, great. Okay.
They work, but actually I use one, but one part of it. But
situation normal.
Yeah, but Rev E is the ones that Tapper has in our shipping.
Oh, okay, so that doesn't even match what he had sent us. Somebody has to go to Phoenix and offer him water. Then he'll
take a can.
I think what I'll try doing is I know my wife is been talking with Yeoman quite a bit about her paper. I think I'll try and get in touch with Yeoman. I'll try and get him back on this call for like next week, and then maybe we can try to solidify our plan for getting this paper wrapped up. Because I think I really like the idea of having a really nice open design that really is actually open.
Right. So I presume there's a time factor for the paper. So
yeah,
that's something Dave would have to pull together fairly soon.
Well, I can bring up, I have access to the current state of the paper. It's on Overleaf. And
it sounds like in terms of for presenting something that's fully open source, be a lot easier to go with Dave's design. Since they're functionally equivalent, and we know Dave has the files.
Yeah, so this is, let's see. This is what it looks like so far.
How's the form factor of yours, Dave, match this?
Well, it's not like those pictures because that's got an earlier version of the board, but and they're different color, but I think this describes them perfectly well.
Yeah. Well, pictures, of course, can be updated.
Would you have a set of boards that you'd be able to run and test and take pictures of?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I got to where I was having an awful lot of trouble soldering those 90. I have my bomb. I have full sets of parts, and I don't have any assembled. And it depends on how whether they work or not. Usually I manage to short that 9516 or whatever it is, Chip. I may just have too much tremor these days. I don't know. But other than that, yeah, I can make them. I can make a set and that look good,
Okay.
especially if my mother will behave and stay out of the.
Yeah, if our parents would just behave.
Yes. How does this?
Yeah, tell me about it. My father's giving us fits.
Yep. She's going to be 95 next Friday. And,
That's
Wow.
impressive.
Very good. Yeah, my father's 94.
Can we see this draft paper?
Can you see it?
Yeah, well, can I get a copy?
Oh, sure. Here, I can email it to you right now.
All right, thanks.
you might copy me on it too.
Sure.
Just so I don't know what version I have.
Home, new items. Attach file. Browse this PC. Downloads. Hardware X magnetometer. Insert. Draft. Hardware. X magnetometer. Paper. And so this will go to KA9Q. Anyone else want a copy?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah. N1HAC. Let's see. McGaw. There. Anybody else?
Any other papers in progress? Is this the main one?
I think that's the main personal space weather station paper in progress.
Okay.
I have a number of medium scale traveling and large scale traveling atmospheric disturbance papers in progress. But those are not personal space weather station papers.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely have some irons in the fire on the MSTIDs and LSTIDs and that sort of thing. And that's kind of the thing one of the things I have to get going next on. Or really get wrapped up, I should say.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can show you some results from that because it's actually really cool. Let's see if I go to
I don't have a lot of time now. I have to leave for an appointment soon.
yeah, well, I can just show you. There's really one figure that's like kind of the money shot figure, which I think is really nice, but I have it. Here's the one. Let's get this. So this is looking at the polar vortex and MSTIDs and LSTIDs. So what we're looking at here are 6 months worth of data from November 1st, 2018 to May 1st, 2019. This top panel here is showing the neutral atmospheric winds in the stratosphere, troposphere and stratosphere. So starting at like 0 kilometers altitude going to like 75 kilometers altitude, where you see reds, reds, yellows, things like that. Those are eastward zonal winds. That goes along. This represents where you see these reds, that's the polar vortex going along. That goes along nicely for until about like the end of December, and then all of a sudden you see these dark blues. That's where you get a sudden stratospheric warming, and the polar vortex breaks up, and the winds reverse direction. Then starting in January, you can see the polar vortex comes back, and it continues up until the end of March, beginning of April, where you get what's called the final warming, and the polar vortex breaks down for the springtime and summer. The purple and black lines here, these are measures of atmospheric gravity waves. The black one is a measure at 30 kilometers altitude. The purple is a measure at 50 kilometers altitude. These are measured using optical techniques from spacecraft. And so you can see that generally when you have the polar vortex going, you tend to have more atmospheric gravity waves at those altitudes. When the sun stratospheric warming occurs, it goes away. Down here, the second panel, this is a physics-based model called HIAM-CM where we've modeled the neutral atmospheric perturbations all the way up into the thermosphere, the ionosphere. So this y-axis goes from 0 to 400 kilometers altitude. And so these perturbations should match when you have traveling ionospheric disturbances observed in the ionosphere. So here before the sun stratospheric warming, then the gravity waves go away, and then they start to come back. This panel here shows GPS differential total electron content measurements over the United States from 40 to 50 degrees latitude, right around the middle of the United States at 115 degrees west. You can see that in the November, December, you have more yellows, so there's more TIDs, and then you get the sun stratospheric warming, you get drop off in TIDs observed by the GPS, and then it comes back after the sun stratospheric warming during the period where the polar vortex, and then drops off for the final warming. So again, very consistent. This is my data here. This is a super darn data. Also showing the same pattern. Lots of TIDs in the fall and winter. You have a drop off for the sun stratospheric warming. More TIDs when the sun stratospheric warming is over and the polar vortex is strong again. Less TIDs in the spring. And then so the super darn, these are the MSTIDs, and then down here, this is RBN, WhisperNet, and PSK reporter measurements of large-scale traveling atmospheric disturbances, and you see generally the same sorts of patterns here. You see lots of LSTIDs in the fall up through January. Then you get kind of a lull here. You do get this one spike, but I think that's because I can show that that's because of a kick in auroral activity, and then it drops off again, and then you get the LSTIDs that match what's going on up here, and that drops off in the spring. So this is kind of the main crux of one of the main cruxes of the paper.
Very good.
Yeah. And the other cool thing is I have this plot. This shows super darn observations over 12 winter seasons in the Northern Hemisphere. So I have a large climatology over 12 seasons. You can see these same patterns where you get more STIDs in the fall and winter, less in the spring, and you can see the sun stratospheric warmings occur. And we can do correlations. If you look at all the data, you can show a positive correlation over the 12 years between the super darn MSTIDs and the polar vortex index.
Very good.
Yeah. So I'm working on this paper. I'm first author on this one. My student Diego and my undergraduate advisor Mary Lou, they're working on a paper that just focuses on a climatology of large-scale traveling atmospheric disturbances observed by the RBN and WhisperNet and PSK reporter. So yeah, those are some. And then Bill Engelke, his group is also trying to do one where they're doing automatic detection of these. So we've got like 3 papers that we're working on with this group.
Very good.
Yeah.
I gotta go get some vaccinations. I got an appointment at 8.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Phil. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I better
You guys
go too.
See you guys later.
Thanks. So I guess I'll say 73 then. But thank you everybody for everything.
73.
73.
Later.